Melanie, my girlfriend, and I, Dave, were out with friends on Friday night, enjoying drinks as we often did. There was laughter and good company. Debbie and Phil, married for 3 years, joined us. Mike, Debbie's husband of 4 years, was still working and would meet up with us later. Wendy, currently single, was also with us. We all gathered together, some of us having known each other from school and college, others from work or relationships. We enjoyed various activities together, such as sports, hobbies, and shopping for the girls. We even attended each other's work events. Our group was diverse in interests and backgrounds. I waited for Mike to arrive, holding a small jeweler's box in my pocket containing an engagement ring. I planned to propose to Mel that night. There was a sense of anticipation at the table, centered around Mel. Perhaps they suspected what I had in mind. It was my turn to buy drinks, and I was at the bar. I could hear Debbie's laughter from across the room. She was always the life of the party, never taking things too seriously and making everyone else laugh. Debbie was known for waving her arms around to get attention. She sometimes annoyed me. I noticed she had her phone in her hand and hoped she wasn't recording. She always had her phone with her, relying on it heavily. I knew it bothered Phil at times, too. It was frustrating when she would ask a question and then ignore you as her phone chimed with a notification. I carried 3 drinks back to our table, asking the bartender if I could take them while he poured the others. He agreed and continued topping up my Guinness. I hadn't paid yet. Debbie laughed. "Here comes the little beer delivery boy." Kaz and Mel joined in her laughter. Wendy smiled, and Phil looked embarrassed, having experienced similar situations before. He understood the expression on my face. Mel looked at her friends. "So you're sharing our personal moments with everyone now?" Mel smiled. "I was just telling them how excited you get after helping me with a task." Debbie chimed in. "Come on, Dave. I'd appreciate some assistance under the table. I wouldn't complain, even though it might be a bit tiring. You might enjoy that. Do you have a preference for helping others too?" Kaz added, "I have a task on my left foot that could use your attention, whether it's your hands or tools. Get you all prepared for Mel later." Everyone laughed, including Mel, but Wendy and Phil didn't join in as much. Yes, I had a fascination with feet, and Mel and I discussed it briefly. She was comfortable with it since she enjoyed the benefits. However, I didn't want it to be common knowledge, just as she likely wouldn't want me sharing her turn-ons. I looked at Mel. "Is there anything else you'd like to share with them?" She replied, "Oh, I'm sure there are other secrets I might reveal." She laughed. Debbie leaned across the table and touched Mel's hand. "Come on, what other naughty secrets does our little foot fetishist have? Does he like it when it's up the other end too?" This brought on more laughter. Eventually Phil and Wendy started giggling as well. Laughter is contagious. I walked away, not to the toilet, not to the bar, straight to the door of the pub. I got there, turned, and looked back. All 5 were in fits of laughter. I didn't think they had missed me. I went home and sat there, contemplating if she would discuss our intimate secrets with people like Debbie. Did I want to marry her? The answer was no. The next question was, did I want to keep seeing her? I loved her, but she overstepped the boundary. I waited for her call, but it never came. Did they not even wonder where I was? It was getting late, and I was growing angrier. Did she hold me in such low esteem that she didn't worry about where I was? I opened some trash bags and went upstairs, packing her clothes and toiletries inside. I placed the ring on top of the box and set the box aside. I locked both the front and back doors before lying down to think. It was 11:30 when I heard a car drive up and leave in front of the house. I thought it was a taxi. Soon after, there was a knock on the front door and the doorbell rang. The noise stopped, and I heard the back gate rattle and more banging on the back door. Mel probably realized she was locked out. She came back to the front, where our bedroom was. When she rang the bell again, I opened the bedroom window and looked down at her. "I thought you went to Debbie's place to make fun of me," I said. "It was just a laugh, a bit of a giggle," she replied. "Our sex life and humiliating me is just a laugh now, isn't it?" "It was just a joke. I didn't mean anything by it." "If you didn't mean anything by it, why did you share personal details with friends, especially Debbie, who you know can be gossipy?" "I can't help but feel that I'll be the subject of jokes. And what was that comment about me taking it up the arse? You didn't intervene when Debbie made that remark. Instead, you joined in the laughter. It seems like you've been making fun of me behind my back for the past 3 hours. No, we didn't. Well, you obviously didn't worry about my whereabouts because no one from our group has reached out to check on me. I could be injured or lost, and you all would be none the wiser. No, we just thought you were upset and would return. We got caught up in the moment and lost track of time. When we realized it, it was late, so I went home. 11:30, spent all that time laughing about a situation involving me. I suppose they found it amusing. She looked down. No, well, not really anything specific. Did you share any of your likes with them? I bet you didn't. Did anyone else open up, or was it just me being the focus? No, we moved on to a different topic when we noticed you weren't returning with the drinks. So you continued teasing me until you realized I had left. It wasn't me you missed, but the person bringing the drinks? Not only did you tease me, but you also didn't bother to check where I was. Frustrating. So, what was so funny about the situation anyway? It was a sort of truth or dare game we were playing. And I suppose you went first to make me look like an oddball. They are our friends. We trust them. What? Debbie just stopped teasing Wendy about being gay a few months ago. How much fun do you think she'll have with me? Please, dear, let me in. We can discuss this. It's getting late. She was crying. You're right. It's late. Maybe we can figure out where this relationship is headed. I threw the plastic bags out the window, hearing them land in the front garden. I heard her crying again. Where will I closed the window. I did care about where the relationship was going, but I didn't want to show it. I went downstairs, unplugged the doorbell, and left my phone there. I went upstairs and watched out the window as Debbie's car pulled up. She got in and drove away. I went to bed, relieved to be away from Debbie. I planned to get my revenge. As I lay in bed, I thought about Mel and our shared adventure. It didn't take long for Mel to return home, complaining about being on her feet all day. She had worn the wrong shoes and was exhausted. She collapsed onto the sofa. I kindly offered to massage her feet. She accepted, but mentioned her shoes had made them smell. She promised to take a shower as soon as she had the energy. With that, she closed her eyes, and I was certain she fell asleep. I had an idea. I went and got a bowl of warm water and some soap. I eased her shoes off her feet and started to wash her feet. When they were clean and dry, I rubbed her feet, running my thumbs up her soles. She groaned, and I recognized that sound. She moved her legs apart, but I didn't proceed further. I gently lifted her foot to my mouth and kissed her big toe. Mel moaned slightly. I started nibbling gently down the soft arch. That was when I realized I had an erection. I could see up Mel's skirt, and it appeared she had a wet patch up there, but it was dark, so I wasn't sure. I transferred my attention to her other foot. She moaned some more. After a few moments, she opened her eyes. Wonderful job, dear. She motioned for him to carry on. However, could you perhaps use your lips and tongue higher up? He agreed, nodding. Happily, he said, but mentioned, I might require some assistance removing the skirt and undergarments. She complied, lifting her backside and pushing her skirt upwards. He reached down and took off her undergarments. They were damp. I gently separated her legs and gently touched her with my tongue, focusing on her sensitive areas. We both knew what she enjoyed, and in this position, it was simple to please her. She breathed heavily, anticipating the pleasure. I increased my attention to her sensitive spots, licking rapidly and gently pushing 2 fingers deep inside her. She reached her climax with intensity. Once she had recovered, I removed my fingers and unbuttoned my trousers. I revealed my erect private part and entered her gently. I didn't want her to lose the momentum. I thrust in and out, rhythmically. This was not a gentle love-making session, but rather an intense and passionate encounter. She reached her climax once more, and I followed closely behind, releasing myself deep within her. We both took a few minutes to catch our breath and regain our composure. I'm not sure, but it was enjoyable. Maybe we should get takeout and take a shower. We both smell now, she said with a laugh. My feet don't. That was nice. She chuckled and said, My feet don't. That was nice. After some research on the internet, I discovered that I might have a foot fetish. A few days later, I mentioned my possible interest in feet. She replied that it was fine as long as she benefited from it, and she playfully rubbed my crotch. I understood her message. She would sometimes ask me to rub her feet after a long day, or I would just play with them while we watched TV. Other times, I would wash them for her. We usually had great sex after I played with her feet. I thought our feelings were mutual. However, I decided to learn massage techniques so I could massage her calves and shoulders, which often ached after a long day. A small issue arose a few weeks into giving foot massages. She called me her foot slave, which startled me. I stood up and left the room. She quickly followed and apologized. I informed her that if she continued with such remarks, I would no longer provide the service. She never made such comments again. I believed I had established appropriate boundaries. After finishing work in the garden with Mel on a sweltering day, we both felt sticky and sweaty. Mel proposed taking a shower together. She inquired if I would wash her feet first, given her flip-flops. She gave a playful smile, knowing the direction a foot wash would lead. I decided it was the perfect moment to try out my new thumb techniques. I had watched a few videos on YouTube and wanted to put what I had learned into practice. It was successful, and Mel became quite vocal. Before things went too far, I took her to the shower. We washed each other, and we both spent time on our knees, with our mouths on the other's genitals. As I washed her back, she said, "Now." She placed her hands on the shower walls and pushed her backside out. I entered her, firmly. Mel screamed. Mel's voice grew louder, and I realized that with the heat, all the windows were open. I didn't want our neighbors to hear us, so I covered her mouth with my hand. Mel gently held my wrists. I believed she wanted me to remove my hand from her mouth. So I let go. She wasn't. She guided my hand back over her mouth. The situation was chaotic, and I made a few mistakes with the water and hands moving around. I continued to move closer to her as my hand covered her mouth and nose. I felt her attempt to inhale, but she couldn't. She experienced a strong climax, which made it challenging for me to support her as she moved around. After discussing the situation, we believed it was due to her feeling overwhelmed. We experimented with various techniques, such as deep breathing exercises and gentle touch. A focused breathing method proved more effective. One day, while she was practicing and I was providing support, I gently guided her breaths. Suddenly, I had a brilliant idea. I encouraged her to take her time and fully experience each breath. She felt a sense of calm and relaxation wash over her. We soon discovered that mindful breathing was the key to her well-being, especially when she was inhaling. Both of us felt relieved to have a shared interest. It didn't have any significant impact on me besides the obvious of expressing love to her. Her favorite position was having her hands restrained above her head, not for the bondage aspect, but because I couldn't support her when she reached climax. In our bedroom, I installed a pull-up bar in the doorway. I would enter her from behind, using one hand to silence her, and gently squeeze her nose, while the other hand stimulated her love button. To avoid leaving rope marks, we switched to leather wrist cuffs. Eventually, she had a pair of leather gloves and the wrist cuffs, which lessened the marks. Seeing how much she enjoyed the massage, I devised a plan. I wanted to learn massage, but there were no classes nearby. I decided to visit a local massage parlor to see if they knew of any places to learn. I was a bit apprehensive, as massage parlors can sometimes be sleazy. However, this one was clean and professional. I explained my situation to the receptionist, who seemed a bit confused. She called the manager over. I repeated my request to the manager, who gave me a strange look but invited me into her office. She offered me coffee, which I accepted as she made it. I looked around her office, which was neat and organized. The manager was a few years older than me, attractive, fit, and had an accent from the former communist Eastern Bloc. "I can teach you. It's a business, so there will be a cost. Why do you want to learn?" "My girlfriend enjoys it, and I do too. In all my experience in this field, I sense there's something you're not sharing." Feeling my face grow warm with embarrassment, I looked at the woman. She tilted her head slightly and smiled, giving the impression she had witnessed many life experiences. "I really like that," my girlfriend mentioned. I took a deep breath and told the woman, I think I might have a preference for feet. It was the first time I'd ever said it, but it felt good to finally share it. The woman looked at me, her head slightly tilted and a smile on her face. At last, someone who acknowledges their own preferences. I can help you with that. She extended her hand. My name is Jane. You can call me Jane. We negotiated a price. She wanted £40 per lesson, but I wanted to pay 20. We agreed on £30, as long as the lesson lasted a full hour. Over the next couple of months, Jane taught me how to properly perform a Swedish back, neck, and shoulder massage, as well as foot and calf massages. I took time off work during the day and made it up in the evening. Jane organized a training program, which was halfway completed when things went awry. Mel revealed Jane's unusual foot fascination to their friends. Everyone laughed, so Jane left the pub and ended the relationship. The next morning, Jane's phone was flooded with messages from their friends. They arrived after 1:30 a.m. Jane read a few messages, then deleted the rest unread. To avoid confrontation, Jane went for a run while they tried to contact her. The security cameras recorded them, including Mel looking at the camera and asking for entry. Jane waited around the corner until their friends left, then returned home. I spoke with Mel's parents. I expressed that Mel had shared private information and laughed about it, making me feel disrespected. I didn't want to be friends with someone who would do that, even though I cared for her. I couldn't continue our relationship. Mel's mom asked gently if there was a ring in the ring box. I responded, "What good is an empty ring box?" I heard her crying as I ended the call. I wanted to get back at Debbie for her years of negativity and Kaz for blindly following her. While we all occasionally follow others, Kaz didn't seem to understand the consequences. However, I could forgive Phil and Wendy for their laughter, as it's contagious. I made my plans, but did I want to teach Mel a lesson or just guide her? That decision was mine alone. I cared for her deeply. It would depend on her actions. She never apologized for what happened, not in any messages I read. After that, I didn't give her much consideration. I was a software developer and worked from home most days. The company required us to come into the office once a week. They claimed that in-person brainstorming by the coffee machine produced better results than virtual meetings. They were right. I chose to go to work every day, arriving early and leaving late. I entered through the back door and exited the same way. I observed and often saw Mel or someone else waiting for me. After a month, they stopped bothering me. It seemed like they moved on. My plans were coming together. My hair had grown out, and I had a beard. I was no longer being hassled, so I resumed working from home. I had the day free to catch up on work in the evening. I began following Kaz and Debbie. Kaz was an easy target. I quickly got a couple of photos I needed, as she was having lunch with a work colleague. She gave me a strange look as I walked past her. Perhaps she recognized me with the facial hair. Following Debbie, however, would be more challenging. Debbie's hidden side intrigued me after observing her for 6 months. A memory of Mel and my past play resurfaced, but confirming it would be challenging. The saying, "Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer," echoed in my mind. I needed to reconnect with Phil, Mike, Wendy, and Mel. Motivated, I asked Jane for help. Together, we went to the pub, and I promised her dinner for her assistance. Upon arrival, I recognized everyone, but avoided them. An unfamiliar man caught my eye, yet his face seemed familiar. I strategized my trip to the restroom, ensuring only the two of us were inside. We had just finished at the sinks after using the urinals. "Hi, large group you're with," I greeted. "Yeah, it's a bit much. My girlfriend wants me to meet her friends for a bit before we go for dinner. Second date. Wishing you the best." "Thanks." We exchanged smiles as we left, the air dryers drowning out further conversation. I walked over to their table and saw Mel, her new boyfriend, the one from the bathroom. It had been 6 weeks since we last met. Mel and her friends seemed to have moved on, and that was okay. When they recognized me, expressions of recognition and fear flickered across their faces. "Hi, nice to see you all again. How have you been?" I received a mumbled response. Mike was with Kaz this time, and I could tell he knew the story. I looked at Mel. "Didn't take you long to move on and replace me then." Mel looked down at the table. I looked at Toilet Man. "Be careful what you tell her. Don't tell her any secrets. She will share them with her friends here. Anything a little odd that doesn't fit in their narrow-minded attitude, they will laugh at you, take the piss, ridicule, and belittle you, and she will join in the laughter, leaving you feeling this big. I held up my hand with my thumb and forefinger about 1/4 inch apart. They all looked chastened. I pulled my phone out. Okay, let's have a last happy photo of my former friends. I lifted it up, took a photo. They didn't look happy at all. Let me send it to you. They were all still quiet. I heard their phones go. Kaz looked at hers and went white and said, "Oh shit." "Mike, you may want to look at that," I said, pointing to my phone. It was a brief video clip I shared with everyone, not the photo. The video showed her holding hands with a man across a table. I knew Mike would recognize the man as a co-worker of hers. I knew Mike wasn't fond of him. Mike's face turned stormy. "Do you have more?" I asked him. "Yes, please," he replied. I sent them immediately. Mike examined the new videos, then got up and left. Kaz chased after him. "Honey, it's not what it seems." She was right. I looked at Debbie, as if to say, "Your turn is next." Then I walked back to my table, where Jane awaited me. Mel approached me, saying, "Dave, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can we talk? We haven't talked since that night." We hadn't before. I had yelled, she had cried, but there was no conversation. "What about your date?" "He's not my boyfriend. It's our second date. I work with him." "Well, you should ask Jane." I pointed to the woman sitting next to me. I didn't reveal who she was. "Jane, excuse me. I apologize for being rude. My name is Mel. Dave is my ex. We had a disagreement. It was my fault. May I talk to him for a minute or two alone?" Jane still had her adorable, gentle European accent, even though she had been living here for a long time. "David is taking me to dinner, but if you ask nicely, how could I refuse? However, we have a table reserved. I'll give you 5 minutes." But she didn't move, which slightly bothered Mel. The pub was crowded, and there was no private spot. "Dave, I'm sorry, but I might need more than a few moments. Can we have tea sometime soon, please?" I yearned for her, but I was still disheartened. I spent £100 returning the ring. Not to mention, I lost the one I cherished. We planned to meet at a tea room in town the following day. She expressed remorse to Jane for her rudeness and relocated to a more secluded table. We could hear voices outside, which seemed like Sam and Tom. Seeing images of your spouse entering a hotel with another individual can evoke such reactions. It was entirely innocent. The photograph was a fabrication, an exceptionally convincing photo montage. I was in the technology industry. I knew individuals who could accomplish that. However, the decisive factor was the date timestamp. Properties would reveal the date and time. The seeds had been sown. Jane said to me, "She is very pretty and polite. She learned her lesson. Take her to dinner now, and take me next week?" She has her date. I took Jane to dinner, then back to the massage parlor, where she let me practice on her with a foot massage and a Swedish back, neck, and shoulder massage. I met Mel for coffee in town, and she had a drink waiting for me. "You asked for this. You start." She looked good, sad, but good. "David, I'm sorry for what I did. I regret it every hour of every day. I was stupid, got carried away with Debbie's stories, and wanted to go one better. It was totally foolish of me. I didn't realize what I had done until I was in the taxi on the way home." Her eyes filled with tears. She said, "I know I was wrong, but it seemed like you moved on quickly." She explained, "Graham, a coworker, has been helping me, and I haven't been doing well since. I miss the little things, like foot rubs." She smiled shyly. "Graham took me to dinner, hoping for more. He's nice, but not like you. I don't think he'll talk to me on Monday." Accepting her apology, she continued, "I want to give our relationship another chance. I made mistakes, and I want to show you how sorry I am. I'll do anything, just please take me back." She held my hands across the table, and I asked, "What do you mean by anything?" She replied, "Anything you want, as long as it doesn't involve anyone else." "Never see Debbie or the crowd again." "Yes," she replied immediately. Her answer came swiftly, as if anticipating the question. "I thought you might ask that of me, and I have to say I will miss them, but if it's a choice between them or you, it's you every time. And to be honest, I think I need to distance myself from Debbie. She's been trying to influence Kaz. She did that to me that Friday night. I didn't realize it until it was too late. We couldn't find you. It was like you disappeared off the face of the earth. We knew you were around because your car kept moving. Where did you go? Nowhere. I just watched for you and waited until you left. I had some cold, wet evenings. We left you alone to see if you would come back. You did, with that lady, who seemed nice. She paused. Are you two together, or am I too late? No, she's my teacher, he replied. If you hadn't teased, you would have learned what she's teaching me. She took a sip of her coffee. Please, can we start over? I won't do anything like that again. What happens between us stays between us. She looked embarrassed. You could have shared what excites me and taken your revenge. Debbie would have enjoyed it. I know you. You wouldn't do that to someone you care about, and I won't do it to you ever again. Please, my love, give me another chance. You won't regret it. I had already decided if she was contrite enough, I would take her back and see how it turned out. She had offered anything except another person. I wondered how far I could push it. What do you call anything? You've already told me what you won't do, and I agree with that. But what else? I think I tipped my hand that I was going to say yes. She smiled. I liked it when you rubbed my feet when I was wearing stockings. I will wear stockings all the time where appropriate. They are not the thing to wear to work, but you can have a veto. I will do whatever, whenever, and wherever, unless I am ill, because I trust you not to embarrass us. Blowjobs, bum sex, bondage, dressing up, latex, leather, role play, outdoors, anything. What do you want? You've thought about it then? Yes, I thought about what I would do to help you, and I'm willing to do almost anything. I don't know what it will be yet, but I'm sure something will come up. Great, she smiled. I have a request. Would you mind rubbing my feet tonight? I'm wearing those nice stockings you like, and if you'd like, you can place your hand gently over my mouth. This situation is quite difficult. After what happened last night, I think I may have unintentionally caused some tension between Kaz and Mike. Their relationship might be in jeopardy. I didn't mean for that to happen. I wanted to teach Kaz a lesson, but I didn't realize Mike would be caught in the crossfire. He's strong. He'll get over it. But this isn't right. I think I can help resolve the situation. She's holding his hand, but one of them is a fake. I'll tell Mike what to look for. I sent Mike a text. Call me. It's important. I didn't want to just call him out of the blue. He was probably upset with me. He called right away. What? Sorry, man. I've caused you more problems than I thought. The photo is a fake. There are clues in there. Open it up for me, and I'll tell you where to look. I pointed out that the date and time clock behind the reception desk was different from the date and time stamp on the photo, and if you looked closely at the watch on the man's wrist, it was over the shirt cuff, and the time was different again. He was a bit calmer now. What about the video? Sorry, mate, that is real, but they didn't leave the restaurant together. I wasn't sure about that. Okay, thanks, I think. Look, sorry for shouting. No worries, you're all good. I'll grab us some drinks next time we meet up. I ended the call and noticed Mel was on the phone too. She held it up so I could see. She was chatting with Kaz. Mel filled her in on the fake photo situation, and Kaz must have overheard me earlier. Mel mentioned, "He's a charming, handsome guy. He's always trying to flirt with married women for fun. I just hope he didn't cross any lines with you, Kaz." There was a pause on the other end. No, don't you worry. I won't tell Mike. There wasn't anything to tell in the first place. See you tomorrow for coffee. I'll be at your place around 2. She hung up. I think you touched a nerve with Mike. I think he already suspects something is going on between them. He has been a bit off these last few weeks. It's tough. We finished our drinks. Mel reached across the table. Please, can I come home with you? I need a comforting moment after listening to Kaz. We did go home. She got her comfort, a foot massage and a cuddle after spending some quality time together. Can I tell Mum and Dad we are back together? Yes, and the crowd. I need to buy Mike a drink, so I will be there Friday. Okay, thanks. She leapt out of bed and went to her phone. Mom, it's all fine. Nothing's wrong. I am at Dave's place. She looked at me. Yes, we are back together. There was a pause. She looked down a bit. No, Mum, I think it's a bit soon for that. See you later. Is she planning the engagement party? No asking if I was moving back in. You heard what I said. I did, but you had better bring a toothbrush back next time you visit, and some underwear. A smile lit up her face. We arranged to meet next Tuesday. She wanted Monday after work, but Graham might be a challenge. But I was having my final lesson on Monday. She was seeing Kaz tomorrow and would let me know what was happening. I went to bed a happier man. Mel went home in the morning to collect her toothbrush. The crowd beat me to it. There was a knocking on my front door at 1 o'clock, and there they all were, bearing gifts. Debbie was in the front. As soon as the door was open, she spoke. Dave, I'm sorry that was out of order taking the mickey out of you like that. I will never mention that again. What you and Mel do is between you. I wondered if my actions with Kaz affected her. Debbie offered a red bottle. I preferred the beer slabs from Mike and Phil. Kaz had white wine, Wendy held flowers, and Mel carried a small suitcase. The suitcase was too large for just underwear and a toothbrush. I invited everyone in, leaving me with no other choice. They all expressed their apologies and vowed not to repeat their actions. I believed most of them. The afternoon proceeded smoothly. Wendy found a vase for the flowers and accepted a glass of juice. Debbie, Mike, Phil, and I discussed the events of the past few months. Mike had some luck betting on horse races. Phil was planning another trip overseas to Belgium next week. Wendy sipped her juice, maintaining her usual quiet demeanor, only occasionally contributing a comment when asked. Debbie didn't stop talking, and I tuned her out. Mel and Kaz went outside to examine something in the garden. They were gone for quite some time, and it seemed nobody noticed, except maybe Mike. They all left, leaving just 4 of us, including Mel and me, to clean up the mess. This was typical for our group. They seemed to believe everything returned to normal. However, one of them was mistaken. After we finished cleaning, Mel asked if she could unpack. I accompanied her upstairs, knowing where to place her belongings. She had only brought a toothbrush, toothpaste, and undergarments. There was ample space for her items. Mel had many bras, underwear, suspender belts, and stockings. As she removed the last item, her leather gloves, I instructed her not to store them away. We spent a quiet evening together, both catching up on our day. Our time was filled with affection, simply enjoying each other's company. As we basked in the afterglow of our intimacy, Mel shared her conversation with Kaz. My earlier actions, using the fake photo and video, had prevented a potential marital issue. Mel had been considering a one-night stand with a coworker, encouraged by Debbie, who promised to cover for her. However, when Mike saw the video, he realized what was happening, and Mel reconsidered her actions. Mel confided in me about her concerns that Debbie might be unfaithful to Phil. Phil wouldn't be able to join us for our next Friday gathering, as he would still be in Belgium and return on Saturday afternoon. I considered whether I wanted to include Mel in my plans for retaliation against Debbie. Mel followed Debbie's lead, but it was Mel's choice. For now, nothing. Phil was away for a few days, making it a good time to see what Debbie did. If she cheated, now was the chance to find out. During the day, Mel didn't bother with her, as she was at work. In the evening, Debbie wasn't alone or just watched TV unless it was something specific. On Wednesday, I followed her to Wendy's house after work. They are friends, which makes sense. They save time and effort by not cooking for one person. Wendy is a vegetarian, while Debbie is not. Wendy is currently between partners. However, Debbie had never once visited Wendy when I followed her previously. Maybe I missed it. I couldn't watch her all the time. I waited a couple of hours in case they went out, but they didn't, so I went home and continued working. The following day, I followed her again, and she went to Wendy's house. I found this odd. I waited an hour, and they had not gone out. I called Debbie, but it went to voicemail. That was strange too, as Debbie's life was always on that phone. She was either talking to people or using it. I called Wendy. She picked up, and I inquired about Debbie's whereabouts. I had a question for her. She claimed she didn't know. This made me curious. Why lie? I waited, struggling to stay awake, but I eventually dozed off a few times. When I saw Debbie leave around 7, I was glad I had stayed up. She went home, changed, and went to work. I went home feeling puzzled and ready for some sleep. I knew Debbie finished work at noon on Friday, as she always mentioned it, and it was repetitive. I followed her, expecting her to head home, but once again, she went to Wendy's. I instructed Mel to reserve a table at the pub, even though she wasn't thrilled about it. I saw Debbie leave Wendy's house and go home. I quickly changed and met Mel at the pub. She looked beautiful. As I sat next to her, she whispered, "My feet hurt. Can you help me later?" "Of course," I replied. Kaz and Mike arrived. They were quiet. Wendy came next, followed by Debbie. I observed Debbie closely. She seemed tired, and her lipstick had a familiar flaw. I recalled seeing something similar when Mel and I played. I needed to confirm my suspicions. I bought everyone drinks, especially Debbie, who had doubles. Phil and Kaz relaxed, and Phil even kissed Debbie on the cheek. This was unusual for them. Phil held Debbie's hand. I told Debbie, "You don't look quite right." "Yeah, it's tough being alone in the house without Phil around." "Hey, I found a shoulder massage tutorial on YouTube. I'll give it a try, even though I might not be great at it. It can't be much different than a foot massage, right?" I thought about using the technique Jane had taught me. I stood behind her and began. I tried to lift her arms a bit, but she resisted. I wanted to check her wrists, but she was wearing a long-sleeved blouse. I used my best skills, and soon she was very relaxed. As I lifted her arms, I saw what I suspected. 2 marks, just like the ones on Mel when we first started playing. I didn't mention them, and focused on her upper arms instead. "How was it?" I asked. "It was fantastic. I won't make fun of you again." "How about a foot massage as well? But you will have to lift them up. I am not getting on the floor." Mel gave me a funny look. I gently massaged Debbie's feet, not a full massage, just enough to settle her. We all chatted about our week. Mike and Kaz shared their plans for a holiday to a small cottage in Cornwall next month. I asked Wendy about her weekend plans. Wendy had a habit of occasionally bringing a girlfriend on Friday evenings, but they never lasted long. Debbie, as always, was there to console her when things didn't work out. She mentioned it was difficult for her. She couldn't find the woman with the same quirks as her. I kindly asked her to share those quirks, and maybe we could help. "You didn't want your foot thing known about, so thanks, but no, it's all right. I can manage for now." Debbie's face turned red. Mike continued discussing golf during the week, focusing on normal day-to-day matters. I stopped buying Debbie doubles. Debbie received a call from Phil, which we all heard. She praised the benefits of a shoulder massage and hinted that he would need to learn that if he wanted any intimacy. It was clear she was using their friendship as leverage. I grew to dislike her more and more. Mel and I exited the gathering slightly ahead of schedule. She mentioned feeling a bit lightheaded and wished to return home. I had a feeling they suspected we had a hidden agenda. Their suspicions would prove accurate. Outside the pub, Mel adjusted her stockings by lifting her skirt. Afterward, she took my arm as we strolled home. She inquired, "What was that for?" I responded, "I was assisting a friend with a problem." She let out a disbelieving laugh. Should I reveal more? Before long, we arrived at our residence. Clothes were strewn across the stairs, leading to our living area. In no time, Mel had her wrists bound to the pull-up bar with rope, without her gloves. I placed a gag in her mouth and fastened it securely. Then I tried a new approach. After removing her socks and fastening a rope around her right ankle, I raised it above her knee and secured it to the pull-up bar. I sat on the floor and began to engage with her foot. At first, I dragged my nails firmly along her sole, not to tickle. That was novel, Mel reacted. I repeated this a few times and then utilized my thumbs to massage the sole of her foot, applying all the methods Jane had taught me, concentrating on the proper pressure points and monitoring her responses. I delicately nibbled the sensitive sole, aware of her preferences. She smiled as they sat on the park bench, enjoying the sunny day. They held hands and talked about their favorite movies and music. As they laughed together, she playfully nudged him, and he wrapped his arm around her, giving her a gentle squeeze. She shivered violently and found herself suspended by her hands. I clung to the pull-up bar as well. I was relieved it could support the weight of 2 people. It took some time, but I freed her from the pull-up bar, and we helped each other to the bed. After hanging from her hands for so long, I gave her a neck and shoulder massage. She sighed in pleasure throughout. She fell silent after that, and we lay there recuperating. She asked, "What was all that stress relief with Debbie about, really? Please, you can tell me." I gently lifted her arms and replied, "I saw the same marks on Debbie's wrists. I think you're right. She's involved with someone while Phil is away." I traced my fingers along her lips, where the ball gag strap had left marks. "And she had these as well." She jumped up. "With who? Wendy? Are you certain?" I recounted the entire situation to her. "I plan to seek retribution. I think Phil should be aware that his partner is unfaithful." "What about Wendy?" "I'm unsure. If she's jeopardizing a marriage, she'll face consequences too, but I can't be certain." Eventually, we grew too weary to converse and drifted off to sleep. In the morning, over tea and toast, Mel remarked, "Last night's foot rubs were amazing, and the work you did on my shoulders after being restrained was incredible. How did you learn to do that?" I shared the story of Jane and the massage lessons. On our second cup of tea, Mel said in a serious tone, "I agree with you about letting Phil know if Debbie is cheating, and if you think it's Wendy, I think I can help. We work together. Would you mind if I had a chat with her? We don't want to go barking up the wrong tree." I told her I thought that would be a good idea. We spent a pleasant day just doing stuff together. I decided to test her knowledge. We watched the highlights of the test match cricket together, and later I had to look in the newspaper to find out the score. Mel arrived at my house around 6 p.m. on Monday. She brought a small suitcase. Was she moving in gradually? The dinner conversation was quite engaging. Mel did talk to Wendy, and yes, it was Wendy that Debbie was having an affair with, but it wasn't entirely straightforward. Wendy was tired of being teased for her sexuality and couldn't change who she was. She noticed Debbie, a co-worker, entering a hotel with a colleague. Although they weren't close or touching, their glances intrigued Wendy. She followed them inside, keeping her distance until they shared a lift. Wendy called the lift back down, and when it returned, they exited together, more openly affectionate. Wendy later discovered the man was Mark Winters, a married father of 2. It seemed Debbie had a pattern of ruining her own life. Wendy invited Debbie to her house for a conversation. When Debbie arrived, she disclosed everything she understood. Debbie, who was typically reserved by herself, confronted Wendy this time. Overwhelmed, Wendy struck Debbie's face and grasped her hair, pushing her onto the sofa. Wendy continued to strike Debbie's backside and noticed her agitation. Debbie's dampness astonished Wendy. Wendy used the situation to her advantage, threatening to reveal Debbie's affair and inform her partner's wife unless Debbie agreed to perform a favor. Wendy had been seeking a submissive partner for a long time, but her unique preference had made it difficult to find someone. When Debbie complied, Wendy was pleased. Mel informed Wendy that she would share everything with the user, and Wendy expected a visit or call after witnessing an event on Friday. Wendy didn't believe she was causing marital issues, as Debbie had already crossed that line with Mr. Winters. In fact, they only engaged in their actions when Phil was away, making it unlikely to be discovered. However, Debbie's confrontation with Dave changed everything. Mel discovered something, and I called Wendy, knowing she expected my call. She understood my desire to expose Debbie. We made a deal. I would reveal Debbie's secret as long as Wendy remained uninvolved. Wendy had recently met a girl and developed feelings for her, and we both agreed that their relationship was working well. The following Friday promised to be filled with drama and revelations. On Friday evening, we all gathered and began to relax. We had our third or fourth drink when Debbie started talking animatedly, waving her arms around. She accidentally knocked over a nearly empty beer glass. I mentioned to Phil that Debbie's loudness could be a problem during intimate moments. Phil considered the idea, but wasn't sure how effective it would be. We joked about asking Debbie's gay or lesbian friend for advice. Debbie's face showed her surprise, and we wondered who that friend might be. "No, I don't know about that, but it seems like she had a tight mouth restraint on." Phil wasn't laughing. I didn't think Debbie's mouth could get any wider. It would take a really big mouth restraint. I looked at Debbie. From the marks on her wrists and ankles, it seems like her lover must have tied her up pretty tight as well. When she had that mouth restraint in her mouth, was she facing you, or facing the other way so you could look up her back? Phil was starting to smile, thinking this was all a joke. Debbie, however, had lost all the color in her face and was looking around worried. Phil thought this was me getting my revenge. Oh no, the next part was my revenge. You could always ask Mark Winters about it. I wonder if he has to be cautious with her, too. She was noticed. I warned you, any more, and you're out, I said seriously. Debbie looked upset and held her hands to her face. Phil took her hands, looked at her, and walked away. Debbie followed him. Fuck me, said Mike. I'll get the next round. Epilogue. Phil and Debbie tried counseling, but it's uncertain if they'll succeed. Debbie is more considerate now. She can be a nice person. Kaz and Phil resolved their issues. A few weeks passed, and we met Wendy's new friend, who appeared pleasant. Wendy mentioned she moved in with them. They must be enjoying themselves a lot. It truly seems that way. Me and Mel, well, yes, she was moving in piece by stealth. I gave in and told her to bring the rest of her stuff. A couple of months later, she was a bit edgy on Friday night. I thought something was coming, but had no idea what. The 2 double gin and tonics she had was a bit of a giveaway. The girls were all coming back from the loo. There was an expectant air about the place. As she reached me in the middle of the pub, she got down on one knee and said, "You proved your love for me enough to forgive my mistake. I want to spend the rest of my life proving my love to you. Will you marry me?" She pulled the ring box out and opened it, and inside were 2 identical wedding bands. "Yes, my sweetheart, I will." She pulled another ring box out of her pocket and held it out to him. "You might want this. I visited every jeweler in town, mentioned your name, and asked which ring you purchased. I got a $150 discount." He took the engagement ring out of the box and gently slid it onto her finger. She smiled at him. He carefully placed the engagement ring box on the floor and stepped on it. "We won't be